Good afternoon. Like I said this morning, we have got geography now. Your skill today is to describe and understand key aspects of human geography, including types of settlement and land use. Okay, so pause the video whilst you write the skill and the date and underline it neatly. Okay, and then we'll move on. So, geography is usually divided into two main themes. You've got human geography and physical geography. So what is human geography? Okay, what is human geography? So human geography relates to human activity or something that is man-made, whereas physical geography relates to geography that occurs naturally. So which of these examples do you think are human geography? So you've got weather, rainforests, rivers, towns and cities, farming, population and volcanoes. So if human geography relates to human activity or something that is man-made, which of those represent human geography? Okay, so the three are towns and cities, farming and population. Okay, weather, rainforests, rivers and volcanoes are all natural, so they're all physical geography. So town, cities, farming and population are human geography. Okay, so look at this map of Tudor London. Talk to your partner, or if you're at home, perhaps talk to somebody around you. What do you notice? Okay, well, it's really interesting this, because this here is actually the River Thames. Okay, and look how much land is around. So much land. Okay, we've got houses and we've got really narrow roads. Okay, but the first thing you notice is the amount of land that is available. This is a modern day This is a modern day map of London. What differences and similarities do you notice? So if you look back at the previous one, compared to a map now, so on this map now, the greenery is land. Notice how much different it is. We've got so many more buildings, so houses, cathedrals, museums, more transport. If you noticed before, here you've got one bridge. Now we've got so many bridges across the Thames. Okay, so in the resources there is this, okay, so you've got the smaller map with the recent map underneath, okay, if you can print it then marvellous, if you can't that's fine, you can just write the differences between the maps, okay, so don't worry, perhaps you could draw the bottom map, have a go at drawing both if you like, if you can't print it, but it's more important that you can understand the differences and similarities. So on your maps, can you highlight the following? So the Tower of London, London Bridge, the River Thames, the City of London, and Westminster and Southwark. Now we've got a video to listen to and watch first. So let's see if that works. So the video will show you where these things are on the Tudor map. You just need to listen carefully to see if you can then plot them on both maps.
This is a map of Tudor London. It was published in 1574 and it gives you a really good sense of the size of Tudor London. This is the Tower of London, which still stands today. This is London Bridge. While the bridge today is different, it's on the same place. And you'll notice that there's only one bridge across the River Thames. and it could get very congested with traffic crossing over this bridge. It could take up to half an hour to cross it. So what a lot of people did, if they wanted to cross over the river, over the other parts of London, was that they, or maybe here, if they wanted to get across quickly, they would hire a small boat to cross over the river. Now, there are three main sections to Tudor London. You've got the City of London, which is inside the ancient city walls. You've got Westminster, where the King's palaces and the court were based. And Westminster and the City of London were connected by the Strand, which was lined with beautiful palaces with gardens going down to the river. And then the third area of London was Southwark, on the south side of the river. And this was an area with a lot of taverns and inns, and it was also the place where they had the buildings where you could watch bear baiting. So you could watch bears being attacked by dogs, which was entertaining in the Tudor period. And this is also the place where the theatres grew up towards the end of the 16th century. Now you notice around London is a lot of fields. And this is because London is a lot smaller than it is today, so it would have only taken about 20 minutes or half an hour to walk out of the city and you'd be in the countryside. These are ships that are coming into London from abroad, and in the Tudor period this was a time of exploration and growing trade with other countries across the world. So these ships would bring in goods to London so that people here could buy new and exciting products.
Okay, so that was really interesting. So each of these things here, okay, are on both maps. Okay, so see if you can identify them. And as I said, please, if you haven't got a printer and you're at home, you can write about these things, that these things still exist. You can write just a small paragraph that these things still exist today, and they were in Tudor London too. Okay, you might want to have a go at drawing this map as it's a little bit clearer and adding these things onto it. That would be a great idea. Okay, so are these human or physical features? Okay, perhaps you want to colour code them, so when you're drawing them on your map or circling them, perhaps you want to circle the human features in red and the physical creatures, can't talk today, the physical features green perhaps, so you can colour code them. You can make a key. Okay, so key aspects of human geography include settlements and land use. What is a settlement? Have you heard of that word before? Let's have a closer look. Okay, we've got the lady souvenir again.
High up in my airship, I can look down and see where people have built places to live and work, from hamlets and villages to towns and cities. We call these places settlements. But how can we tell the difference between a hamlet and a village or a town and a city? Well, it mostly depends on how many people live in a place and how many facilities like shops and schools there are. Let me show you. This is a hamlet, which is a very small group of homes. And this is a village. There's a few shops, a post office, a village hall, as well as a primary school and a doctor's office. This is a town. There are more buildings, and there's a railway station, a secondary school, and a shopping centre. And this is a city. There are lots of buildings and people. There's a cathedral, a sports stadium, and large buildings such as universities and hospitals. Strangely, if a settlement has a cathedral, it's also called a city, even if it's not very big, like St David's in South Wales. Some settlements have a particular function. For example, this is a port. where ships bring goods to and from the UK. And this is a market town, where local farmers and traders buy and sell their produce. It all looks so busy down there. I think I prefer it up here.
Okay, so that told us a little bit more about settlements. So settlements are places where people live and work. And they can vary in size from tiny hamlets to large cities. Okay, so studying settlements can also include looking at their features such as their homes, schools, shops, parks and libraries. So let's have a look a little bit more close at each of the settlements. What advantages and disadvantages can you think of for each? So in the resources there is a table with each of the settlements, and then next to it you've got the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, again, if you can't print it, you can just draw the table in your books. It won't take you long. You don't need to draw the pictures. You can just write the settlement, the advantages and disadvantages. Okay, if you can print it, then that's fine too. So out of the settlements that you've just seen on the videos, which one do you think this is? Do you remember the names? So this one is a hamlet. Now a hamlet is a very small settlement and it's just got a group of houses. Okay, there's not usually any other facilities around, so there's no shops. Okay, there's not a post office, it's just houses. So what would be the disadvantages and advantages of those? Okay, you can jot them down as you go or do it at the end, it's completely up to you. Okay, as an example, I've got the disadvantages being that there's longer journeys to school. So if you lived in a hamlet and you need to get to school, you've got a longer journey, you've got longer to travel, further to travel. There's no shop, so you can't just pop to the shop to get some milk. There's limited job opportunities, okay? Or if you have got job opportunities, again, you have to travel to them like you do the schools. If you need a plumber, if you've got a leak, it might be harder to find those services available. And you might feel a bit lonely, okay, because you've only got a few houses. Now, if you didn't get on with one of your neighbours, it could be a little bit difficult, couldn't it? But also there's good things, there's advantages as well. So you've got privacy, so there's so much privacy. You could have lots of land around you. You might want to have pet chickens or horses perhaps. You could grow your own food and be self-sufficient. You might have a neighbourhood watch, or you might be so friendly with the neighbours that they're just like your family because there's only a few houses there, so you might know everybody anyway. So that's just an example, some disadvantages and advantages. Okay, I'm sure that you have found more and you have thought of more that I haven't thought of. Okay, but you're going to do just the same as that for the others. So a village then. So a village is also small, but it's larger than a hamlet. Okay, it might have houses, a primary school, some shops, a post office and a village hall. Some of you might live in a village. Okay, we've got Elam village, which is close. Okay, villages can vary in size from a few hundred people to several thousand people. Okay, so they do vary depending on where you go. Some villages are still very small. Just showing you there. So think of some pros and cons for that one. Okay, and then I will share with you the ones that I found. Okay, so here are the ones that I thought of. Again, you've probably got many more than me. So, gossiping. I thought if you live in a village, probably everybody knows everything about you. You've got a primary school in a village, but not usually a secondary school, so you have to travel there. You might have a couple of shops, but there's not much choice, so you might still have to travel further out to get to larger supermarkets. And transport is essential, really. If you live in a village, it's difficult to get out into the main towns and cities without transport. The advantages of a village, the schools are usually quite small, so the class sizes will be smaller. So some villages have like 12 children in a class. And there's a good sense of community in a village. Again, like the hamlets, People look out for each other, they know each other well, so you have the help from your neighbours too. Okay, what's this one a picture of? You might recognise this one. Okay, so this one is a town, and a town is larger than a village. This is actually Folkestone town. It's Folkestone Old High Street. Towns have lots of houses, usually primary and secondary schools, a hospital, sometimes they have a railway station and a shopping centre. Towns can contain tens of thousands of people, but a town in one country, so a town in England, might be completely different to a town in Spain or Africa, okay? So just be mindful of that. Not everyone has tens of thousands of people in their towns. Okay, so again with your pros and cons, please do think of your own and add to your own lists. But you've got higher prices, so if you live in a town, there's more demands, you've got higher prices can be charged. There's usually a good and a bad area of towns. Okay, because unlike a hamlet, you've got one place where the houses are. Towns are bigger. Okay, the houses are wider spread, so you've got wealthier parts of the town and those for less fortunate. There's more competition for clubs and jobs and schools, so some of you go to brownies or cubs, okay, or karate. Sometimes the more people that live in a town, it's more difficult to get into those groups because there's more competition for them. However, there are more shops, okay, so you've got more choice of shops. There's accessible transport because you've got railway stations. Okay, we've got 2 railway stations in Folkestone, Folkestone West and Folkestone Central. Okay, there's buses, there's lots of things travelling more regularly, and there's less travelling to amenities. So the chances are, even if you don't live near the actual high street, by living in Folkestone, you're quite often near a shop. Okay, or whether it's Hawkinge or Hythe, there's shops nearby. Okay, then lastly, we have got a city, and some of you may recognise this as being Canterbury. Canterbury is our nearest city, and it's the largest type of settlement. It's got lots of buildings, lots of people, and it usually has hospitals, sports centres or facilities, sometimes sports arenas, universities, shops, offices, many houses, and most importantly, a cathedral. So a cathedral is what's believed to make cities cities. Out of the 4 settlement types, cities have the largest population. Therefore, there are less of them. Okay, so because they're the biggest, they have a largest population, there's less of them. Disadvantage of a city, they're busy and crowded. They're higher house prices or rent. Increased living expenses, and it can be noisy because there's so many people. A lot of people go to visit cities, okay, especially tourists. However, because there are universities and colleges, there's greater education opportunities. Usually if you work in a city, you get higher pay, so higher salaries. Better entertainment. So what I mean by this one is that a city, sometimes you'll get pop stars or famous people that will do things, will come to a city, the local big city, and perform. Whereas if you lived in a hamlet, it's very unlikely you'd get Ariana Grande come to a hamlet to sing some songs for you. Okay, they would should go to somewhere like Canterbury, and you've got the theatres in Canterbury where you've got the where shows and things, but you wouldn't get those in a hamlet. And obviously you've got the public transport accessible as well. So excellent. So make sure you are adding to your advantages and disadvantages of those. Okay, so thinking back to the settlements, what type of settlement is this? Think carefully about the layout. What do you notice? So this is of course a Tudor village. Okay, you can see the houses are all spread out. Got a village church there. Okay, what do you think this settlement hierarchy represents? So down this side here, so we've got cities, towns, villages, hamlets, and we've got large to small and low to high. What do you think the large to small represents? Okay, well, the large to small is actually the size. We know that cities are larger than hamlets, okay? But what does the low to high mean? Okay, some of you may remember what I said about cities is that because the cities are largest, there's less of them. Okay, so the size goes from smallest to largest if you go from the bottom upwards, and there's more, excuse me, there's more hamlets than there are cities, okay, because they're smaller, so you can fit more in basically. Cities have thousands and thousands of people, so they're harder to fit in onto land, which takes us on to land use. Okay, so what is land use? Land use is when humans use an area of land for a specific purpose to meet their needs. May be used as it naturally exists or changed to fulfill a particular role. So there are 5 main types of land use. Can you think of any? What do you think people use land for? Okay, so pause the video, have a think, see if you can jot them down if you're at home. Why do people use land? Okay, so residential, people build houses. Agricultural, so people use land for farming and growing crops. Recreational, so they might want to make parks and tennis courts, football pitches. Transport. And commercial, so shops. Okay, so there's lots of different uses of land there. Thinking about the Tudor period, what do you think land was most commonly used for? So which of these 5 do you think land was the most used for? Okay, if you said agricultural, you would be correct. Okay, so Tudor England was a farming society with most of the population, so over 90%, living in small villages. One aspect of agriculture that developed in the reign of Henry VII was enclosure. So that's where land could be fenced off and the owner of that land could do with it as he pleased. Okay, now many of that land, so you can see here, it's a village and it's got lots of land around. Okay, so although there are houses being built, okay, so much land still exists around it. Okay, so the first half of the 16th century saw a rapid growth in the cloth trade. That demanded in a greater need for wool. So if we go back here, the farmers could do what they want with their land, so they could grow crops, but many of them actually used it for sheep farming, okay? London was the most important trading city in Tudor England because many of the ships lined the banks of the River Thames, which provided an important trading link with the newly discovered America. Okay, who did we learn about last week, which we learned went to America instead of Asia? It was Christopher Columbus. So during the Tudor rule, England became richer than ever before as the country became wealthier, towns grew, beautiful houses were built, and schools and colleges were set up. Rural areas become more developed and contributed to changes in land use and settlement. So if we look here, this was the River Thames in the Tudor times with the ships coming in. Now look at the River Thames today. Okay, so much, all this land use, so this was all used for farming. Well, not this actual city bit, but just outside, there's a 20-minute walk to the countryside. Okay, but there were never houses and buildings built up like this. Okay, so over time, land is built on. So you might have a piece of land near your house, okay, which for now might just be used for agriculture, or it might just be a park. But as times change, as the need, perhaps say more people come to England and more people come to Kent, the need might be for houses. So that land might be built on to build more houses for the growing population, which is exactly the same as what happened to London in Tudor times. So people ended up going to London, the city, because they could import and export via the River Thames. And because more people were going to London, they had to build more houses. And as the Tudors became wealthier, obviously that's when the houses and schools and colleges were set up. So the land use, although it was used for farming then, it still is used for farming now, but we've just got many, many more buildings now than what we did have. So, I did forget to mention that you can draw your your settlement hierarchy triangle. You can draw that in your books as well if it's going to help you remember. Okay, but that is it for me this afternoon. It's my last day in the bubble today with you until everyone comes back next week, which I am so excited for. So, take care, guys. I shall see you all Monday with big smiling faces, and we're going to have a fab first week back. So, enjoy, and I might see some of you on Thursday for World Book Day. Bye.